Hey guys. Hey. Just gonna wait a little bit and then I'm going to start. And meanwhile, I can show you my cable wall. Hi. Hey everyone. All right. I hope you guys can hear me. I hope it's fine. Can you guys hear me? Can you just say like you can hear me or you can't? All right, good. So, what we're going to do today, I got a few questions about it from you guys, and a lot of them were concerning charcoal art. So I thought I would do this live in two sections. The first section, I will just explain a little bit about like normal pencils. And then the second section, I will go on about charcoals, and then I will also try them out a little bit and explain more about them. So if you're more into charcoal art and if you want to know more about that, then you just, drop out for now and then join 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, and you can hear more about it. So, all right. First of all, we're going to talk about just pencil art. These are the supplies I usually use when I make one of my artworks. And it looks like a lot, but it's actually everything has its own role. And yeah, I actually use all of these things. So let's just start from here. And you guys asking, yes, I'm going to re-upload this live later, so you can also re-watch it on my YouTube channel. Don't worry. Okay, then let's start. So what do you need when you want to make pencil drawings? Well, basically, the only thing you need when you want to make pencil drawing is a pencil and maybe an eraser. But actually, to do detailed pencil work and to really make an extensive drawing, it's not enough to just use a pencil and an eraser. Usually you need to have some more things. What I use is, of course I do use normal pencils like these. Most of my pencils are Faber-Castell, which is my favorite brand. And I find Faber-Castell is a really good pencil brand. They're not that expensive here in Germany. Maybe overseas they might be a little bit more expensive, but here they're very affordable. And another brand I really like to buy pencils from is Koh-i-Noor. It's especially good for really dark, like 6B and up. And Faber-Castell is, I think, a little bit better for lighter, like H and HB. Then, I also use a ruler because I freehand my sketches, but then if some things don't work out, then I check it. So I check the reference, like how much centimeter is this, and then I check it on my artwork and check where I'm wrong. Very useful. Now I have an I have a pencil sharpener. This is one that's also from Faber-Castell. I advise you, if you buy a pencil sharpener, invest in one that is from a brand like Faber-Castell, because you're able to make much sharper pencils, and then you can make better details. I also use other types of erasers besides this one. I use these kind of pencil erasers, they're called, and they're very useful. So if you have like some small lines that you need to erase, you can use these. And this very small one, the Tombow Mono Zero, I talked about it before, very useful for details, for erasing details. And then I also use a kneading eraser, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about how that works when we try out some of the pencils, and also from the charcoal. So these are the Koh-i-Noor ones. Then first I'm going to talk about this one. This one is the darkest pencil I have. It's a 9B pencil, And it's a lot of people think that I do the black backgrounds from my drawings with charcoal, but that's not true. I use this one actually. It's very, very dark, and if you blend it, you get a very nice effect. And then I also use these kind of mechanical pencils for small details. Actually, I have two from Faber-Castells, but this one is my smallest. This one is from Japan. It's a Pilot one, I think. Canon Pilots. Yeah, Pilot one. And it's 0.3 millimeters, super tiny. And you can, if you work small, you can nicely like make an eye with it. Stuff like that. Well, and the leads for that, of course, you also need to buy them. Then I noticed many of you might not know these kind of pencils. They're a little bit more like for professionals, I guess. These are also from Faber-Castell. These are refillable pencils, and they work like this. Wait, I can see if I can. You press on here, and then there's a lead in there, you see? It's really long. And then, whoops, gotta get back in. This works better because when normal pencils, the point is they become smaller when you sharpen them. And then what you have to do is you put them in this kind of like tubes to make them a little bit longer, because otherwise you cannot draw with them. With these ones, of course, you don't have to do that. You can just sharpen them with a special sharpener like this. And you can constantly refill them. It's very useful, and I think it's also better for the environment actually, because you don't need to use up pencils constantly. I use these a lot. The only thing is you cannot buy them in anything lighter than HB. So they're especially good for dark, for if you want to do a lot of dark drawings. Yeah, it's basically like a thick mechanical pencil, that's true. And so it's basically when you want to work darker, and I personally like to work with a lot of black in there, this is really good. Then let's move on to the blending. So I use several tools to blend. Several brushes, like these. These are my favorite brushes to blend. These are actually just makeup brushes. I bought these makeup brushes from eBay sometime, and I figured out that they actually work really well for blending. This makes it super soft, like super soft, nice blending. And then for more detailed blending, you can take a tinier pencil. This is actually an eyeshadow brush, and these are, I think, these are brushes for aquarelle, for water paints, watercolor. So I use that for blending. This is for soft blending. But if you want to make sure that something like this, if you want to blend this, you need something else. You usually use either tissue, just go over there, make it all, you know, make it cover everything. And then you also have these kind of blending stumps, they're called. They blend a little bit more aggressive. Like when you blend it, it's completely smudged. Compared to the brushes, which blend a lot lighter, it's a lot more rigorous, so to say. And then there's also, I use also these kind of Q-tips just for tiny details. Also for skin, I use them a lot to make like skin patterns and stuff like that. Yeah, oh, and then this one. This one is actually not a brush I use to blend with. This one is a brush that I use to make sure that there's nothing on my paper. Because sometimes when you erase stuff with your eraser, you get all these eraser thingies. And then you just do like this. And then you don't have to smudge it, because if you do it by hand, you will smudge your entire drawing. So this is why a brush like this is useful. I bought this one in Japan. But I think if you just Google, or if you search on Amazon for like eraser brush, you will also find it. Okay, I think that was more or less what I had to say about my pencils and stuff like that. Now I'm going to move everything a little bit around, because I want to show you guys the paper, because there were also a few questions about what kind of paper I use and how I use it, etc., etc. So let's see. Sorry for the noise, everyone. So then I use different kinds of paper. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry that I move around the video camera so much. This is my favorite kind of paper. It's called Pink Pig. It's 200 grams paper, or 180 grams or 200 grams paper, and it has a texture that's a little bit rough but mostly smooth. Then I also use just normal sketchbook paper. This is very cheap. You can easily just, do some studies on it like that, and then you don't have to fear that you're wasting your paper, so to say. So this is, oh, actually, I don't know if you guys know, but it's important to check the grams per meter too. The thicker ones you get, the better it is usually. The really thick ones are best for wet media, and the medium to thin ones are best for like dry media and pencils and stuff like that. This one is 19 grams. I use it just for sketching. It's not particularly good. It's actually, but it'll do for just studies. Then this kind of paper I use for my watercolors. As you can see, it's a lot thicker. For watercolor, I personally like this brand a lot, Canson, and it's really thick. Like you can't even, if you can see it, it's like pretty difficult to bend it. But I don't do watercolor that much, so. Then you also have stuff like this, special kinds of paper. This is manga paper, so to say, and it actually has a pattern, so you can, I don't know if you guys can see it. Yeah, it has like a ruler and stuff like that. So if you want to draw comics, this kind of paper is good, because it already has like a ruler in there. But I also don't really draw a lot of comics, so. And then this is for the charcoal, and I'm going to explain to you a little bit more about that later. As you can see, it's not white, it's gray. It's toned gray. This is Strathmore. This is also a really good brand. If you want to try out charcoal, I advise you to invest a little bit in toned paper, and then preferably something like from Strathmore or something. I'm going to try out charcoal with you guys a little bit later, so let's put that aside for now. And then I'll just show you a little bit about this kind of paper and how every pencil and stuff like that works. Let me see. Yeah, so fun fact, the last drawing that I made from 10, wow, well, I didn't get that one right at the first try at all. That was, wait, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tries. Haha, yeah. No one's perfect. So let's use this. Let's use this 10, and then we'll show you a little bit about blending and stuff like that. So some of you also asked about what kind of pencil to use for what kind of blending and for what kind of shading, etc., etc. Wo kann man in Deutschland? Kann man einfach auf Amazon kaufen. So, at least I bought it from Amazon. That's where I bought it. So, for example, this 10 didn't work out, but we're going to use 10 anyway to show you how to shade, yeah? So I already did it a little bit. What I use first is I get a lighter shade, like something from 2H. Maybe H, maybe HB, something like that. Then we're going to shade in the areas. I don't have the reference with me right now, but I remember his hair was black, was rather black. And note what I do. I shade not like this, because if you do it like that, you will get scratches inside of the paper. You do not want that. You have to hold it on like this kind of degree angle, like this, and then just start. This way you make sure that there's no scratches in the paper, because scratches, they show up when you blend. Alright, and now I think here was also a lot of shading, because that was his neck, and then this of course was his. So, kein Problem. Ja, ich spreche auch ein bisschen Deutsch, weil ich in Deutschland wohne, aber ich bin eigentlich Niederländerin. Jo. So. What is this? Oh yeah, fun fact, I use like little caps and other kinds of tapes and stuff like that to make sure that I recognize which is which. This is an F, I think, or an H. Make it a little bit darker. Then we make his like this. We go. Oh yeah, if you notice what I did when I started sketching this out, you can see it a little bit. I use with shapes. So I draw like this, and then I make the shapes from the head, like the cheekbones, the nose, the lips, the chin, how everything worked. You have to have like a little bit of a basic understanding about anatomy of the face. I learned all of my anatomy from the face from a guy called Andrew Loomis. And you can Google him. There's PDFs because it's kind of like, it's almost 100 years old, I think, by now. Or maybe no, 50 years at least. You can Google him, you can get PDFs from his studies and from his research, and then you can just, study how to draw a face. And that's how I figured out how to draw faces. Alright, so here's a bit of a basic shading. There might be a little bit more shading going on here. The light is coming from this side, so there's no shading over there. Ear is also shaded. So now this doesn't really look super nice, of course. What we do then, this is the first step of shading. First step of shading can be really messy and clumsy, it's fine. We take a little bit of tissue paper, we go over there. Make sure, look, if you see here, you can still see the scratches of the pencil. You have to make sure that it doesn't show up anymore. So just go over it quite a little bit. Let's see. Alright. Then we go over it a little bit more, but this time we don't use an 2H or an H, we use an HB or something like that. Let me see, was an HB? No. And we go over it again. Although this is actually a B, but it doesn't matter. So what you do is you work from light to dark. You never work from dark to light. You don't work from immediately dark, or at least if you want to shade the way I do, because there's many ways of shading, of course. So then you take your tissue paper again, and you go blend. That's the first stage of blending, basically. Now, I did it a little bit sloppy, but you guys get the idea. However, what you see now is that it's so sloppy that you can't really see his outline anymore. So you can take either your kneading eraser, or you can take a pencil eraser like this one, for example, and you can erase it. I'm going to use the kneaded eraser right now. All right. Now, what you can also do is, ideally you would go over it a little bit more and then make the details a little bit darker, and then you can blend that with either a Q-tip, because you work from light to dark, but you also work with the blending materials. You also work from big blending materials like the tissue and the big brush. Then you work to smaller one, like towards the tiny brush. Always work from from light to dark and from big to small, more or less. That's what I do. And yeah, I'm going to save this video on YouTube, don't worry. So, going to shade his face a little bit more because his skin tone is not white, of course. Then for highlights, we know that the light source comes from there, right? So we know that approximately here should be a lighter place. This should be lighter. His chin should be lighter, because that's his nose, of course. Like this. This side of his and his, how do you say, his septum. Something like that. Basically what you do, you just continue blending and erasing, blending and erasing, blending and erasing, until you get more and more details. Shading, you always work from light, so HB, towards darker. The darkest ones I usually do with 6B, and then the backgrounds, like I said, I do with 9B, this big one. And the big one I can show you. It goes like this. Now this doesn't really look nice, of course, but if you do it like this, that looks a lot better, doesn't it? So, and the most beautiful part about pencils like this is that you can erase it so easily. This is one of the reasons that I like to work with pencils so much, because you can erase it really easily, and that way you can make really, like, the highlights really jump out. I'll show you. See? And then what I use my big brush for. So actually, if you make pencil drawings and you use regular pencils like this, it's not just about shading and blending, it's also about erasing. Erasing is a really important part about drawing. You can make highlights by erasing. Lots of people always ask me, how do you make white hair like that? You don't draw white hair with pencils, you just erase it. You make it like, let's pretend Ten has white hair over here. And then you just draw it like that. See? Okay, I'm doing it really sloppily at the moment, but this is how it works. And if you then make it a little bit, if you then make a little bit more shadow, it already looks very nice. Then blend it a little bit. How should you know what kind of pencils you're using? Yeah, your pencil should have this on it. It should say it at the bottom, 2H, this one said. There's of course different kinds of pencils that have different kinds of numbers. It will usually be somewhere here. Look, this one has it over here, 8B. And then this one is a very generic one I bought at a shop. It also says it. If your pencil does not say what type of pencil it is, it's usually an HB. However, if you buy an HB that's not a brand like Faber-Castell or Koh-i-Noor, usually it won't actually be the same tint as an HB. It will usually be a little bit more darker. For example, this is a really cheap pencil. It says it's 2B, but if you draw with it, it's super dark. This is actually more like a 4B or 6B even. So, I mean, the best way to check what kind of pencil it is of course to swatch it and just be like, oh, this pencil is a lot lighter, this pencil is a lot darker. Like this one is an 8B, for example, but you can see it's much darker. Whoops. Yeah. This one is an F. This is very light. See, you can just see that. And if there's certain branded pencils, that's really good. Yeah, like I said, I use Faber-Castell. I think that's the best one. At least I really like it. I mean, everyone has pencils that they like, and everyone has different kinds of but I personally really like Faber-Castell. So you can also see, let's try out a little bit of blending, huh? So this is a 6B. I'm going to blend this 6B with different types of blending materials so that you can see the difference, what kind of material the difference, what kind of differences different material make. Wow, I'm really sorry, my English is very impaired when I have to concentrate on multiple things, apparently. So we have 6B over here. First, let's blend it with a tissue. Wow, you can see it blends really well. It's really strong, this blending, and really it gives this really fluffy effect. And I use this kind of fluffy effect to make it seem like it's not focused. But you can also use it, you know, to make some things look more softer than other things. Then the blending stump. As you can see, you can steer the blending stump a lot more. It gives also a stronger... This blending stump, for example, is really good for clothing, drawing clothing, and make clothing folds like this. Works very nice. Then let's try the pencil, the brush. As you can see, the brush is soft, but it also doesn't really blend that much. Like, yeah, sure it blends, but compared to this one, it blends a lot less. You can still see the outline of where I drew. And then lastly we had the Q-tips. There we go. As you can see, Q-tips blend very softly. You can almost not see it, but this is really great for skin. Like if you want to make a certain pattern on the skin, like a little bit of, let's see if I can, well, you can't really see it. This is really useful for skin and making a pattern on the skin. What kind of art supplies do you use for erasing? The erasing pencil, yeah. So you can actually, this one doesn't have a brand, I think, but this one has a brand. It's called the Tombow Mono Zero. It's a 2.3 millimeter eraser, and it uses like this kind of it's like a lead. It's just like a mechanical pencil, but then instead of a lead it has an eraser, and it's super useful. I will upload the name later, so you can just Google it. And yeah, I do also use an editing program to blur my pictures, but usually I also just blur it with blending. So yeah, okay, I think I covered everything about pencils. Let me see. Highlights, that's true. So for highlights, I don't use pencils. For highlights, I use an eraser like this, but I also, to make it pop extra, I use a gel pen. Let's see. There we go. As you can see, it's even wider than the, well, if it works. If it works, you can see it. Don't leave me. There we go. So you can see it's even wider than the paper, and it's a lot wider than the black. This is how I make my highlights with. And I don't highlight everything all over the place, although you can also do that and it does give a nice effect sometimes. But I usually just like put a little highlight in the nose, maybe in the lips and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I also do it in the eye, in the eyes. It immediately pops from the paper, and it really grabs the attention of someone who's looking at it. It works really well. The highlighter I use, by the way, is, whoops, sorry, the Uniball Signo. Hello, can you focus? Yes. Unibel Signo, it's I buy most of my supplies from Amazon, or sometimes when I go to Japan, stuff is cheaper there because, for example, the Unibel Signo, the Tombow Mono Eraser, the Pilot stuff, that's all Japanese brands and those are cheaper in Japan. How do I make uneven skin? I think I'll do a tutorial about that because that's an entire different story. But what I usually do is I make a little bit of blotches like that, and then I blend it a lot, and then even though you blend it, you can still see a little bit of texture. And then if you erase it a little bit like this, the good thing about kneading erasers is that you can really focus erase. I don't know if you can see it, but if you do that, you get a little bit of an uneven skin. I'm doing it really quickly now. Usually I work for hours on the skin. Like usually the skin of a drawing takes me about at least 3 hours, I think. Do I ever use white chalk for highlighting? Yes, I do, only with charcoal, because with graphite pencils it doesn't work. At least I find it not working very well. Alright, so that was the pencil related stuff. Let's go over to the charcoal related stuff. Yoink. Oh yeah, one more thing before I go over to charcoal. How do I preserve my stuff? Usually what I do is I put I don't really use any spray or something for my pencil art. I just put a little bit of pet tissue paper on the most detailed parts, and then I just close my sketchbook. That's how I use it. Right, let's go over to the charcoal stuff. Where did I put my charcoal? Here we go. Let's see. So, for charcoals, the erasers stay the same and also the blending materials stay the same. So even though I use a different kind of medium, I still use several of the supplies that I also use for pencil. Let's see, these are all of my charcoal stuffs. First, a little bit about preserving charcoal. Charcoal is really tricky because it smudges so easily, so it's difficult to preserve. For example, let's see, I put my charcoal paintings upside down in a map that I have another paper in between. And for example, this one, I sprayed it with, it's called concentrated fixative. It's really toxic, so do not breathe it and do not use this in a closed room. You have to be careful with it. I do it outside, and it only needs a little bit, and then it's good forever, so to say. Well, these still work, so. Let's see what's this. Right, I can use this maybe for telling you guys about charcoal. Oh wait, what's on the other side? Okay. So charcoal is something that's really smudgy, like I said. If you put your finger on it, like this, you see it, it's black. It gives off really easily. This sketchbook is Strathmore. I already showed it a little before. Strathmore Tone Gray. For charcoal, I find it personally important to make sure that there's not white paper, because I also use white charcoal, and white charcoal, of course, you don't really see that well on white paper. You need toned paper for that. Yeah, that was Theo. So, charcoal. You have different kind of charcoal pencils, actually. And there's a lot of them. You can even buy just charcoal powder. There's a lot of different possibilities with charcoal. So these are the kind of charcoal things I use personally. First of all, there is the softest charcoal. It's twig charcoal. It's it breaks really easily and it's really soft. It gives off really easy. And as you can see, it blends. Let's blend with a blending stump for educational purposes. Or wait, this one is better. So, as you can see, you can smudge it and then it's almost gone. You smudge it and it's almost off the paper. It's super light. So that is the twig charcoal. Then you also have a hard charcoal pencils, or let's go to a little bit soft charcoal pencils first. This is a soft charcoal pencil. You can see what kind of charcoal pencil it is by brand. Usually it says on the brand like this is a soft charcoal pencil, this is a hard charcoal pencil, and then you know what kind of stuff you can buy. So it gives off dark really easily, but as you can see, it also blends relatively easily. Of course, it's a little bit more difficult to blend than this one, which is really, I mean, if you put your finger on it, it's gone, as you can see. If you put your finger on this one, it's still on the paper. There's a lot of different types of charcoal. So if you want to take up charcoal, you know, be sure to check out what kind of charcoal you buy first. This kind of pencils are Derwent pencils. I like them personally a lot because they're a little bit harder, which means that you can actually use them to draw details with. And I am someone who puts a lot of details in their paintings or in their drawings, so yeah. It's relatively easy. They have as you can see, they have light, medium and dark charcoal pencils. This one is dark and it's very easy to blend. This one is light and a bit more difficult to blend. This one was the dark one. It's nice. I like Derwent because it's both very soft and it's also, if you press harder on the paper, it stays there a little bit longer. So it's very versatile. So I guess if you want to start out using charcoal, then try getting a Derwent set. These kind of sets are like 10 euros maybe. And they're super nice, and to just try out charcoal, you get a charcoal sharpener with there as well. It's easy. Then I also use these. These are General charcoals. It's actually the brand that's called General, so it's not a General pencil. These are really good these are really, really hard. You have to press pretty hard on the paper to get something on there. And then once it's on there, it stays there. You can't really blend it as nicely as the other ones. So here are the kind of charcoals that I use. The lightest one, this I use for sketches, like if you want to get a sketch done. So basically you want to check out what is the drawing that I want to make, how is the face shaped, how is everything on paper. Then you use out this kind of twig charcoal to just, you know, make like a then you can blend it out like that, like, oh yeah, and this is a little bit more soft and this is where the head goes. You can also erase it really easy with a kneading eraser. And look. And it's gone, as you can see. The other ones, so this one is, you can erase like that and it's gone. Then you have which one was this? This was the kind of cheaper one. It's relatively easy to erase. This is the Derwent one. It's a little bit more difficult to erase, but still alright. And then this one, I mean, you can still erase it, but with this one you clearly see that something was on the paper. But yeah, in general, if you start out with charcoal, I would say get a Derwent set like this, because there's several pencils in there and you can just start out and experiment with it. Then of course you also have white charcoal for highlights, and this is why, as you can see, this is why it's so useful to have tinted paper, because you immediately see it's white. If it would be on white paper you wouldn't see it. I have this kind of charcoal or is this my pastel? This is actually a pastel one, I'm sorry, but it works the same as this one is the white charcoal. It's basically the same, basically. And I also use this one. This is Faber-Castell one. It's a bit bigger for bigger, large areas of white. And then as you can see, if you start blending them, personally I use my fingers to blend, but problem with using your fingers to blend is sometimes you smudge, you get oil in the paper, and that's a bit of an issue because that looks not so nice. So it's actually better to use blending stumps, but I use my fingers anyway sometimes. But yeah, as you can see, even though you just use blending stumps to blend and stuff like that, your fingers will still be all over the charcoal powder will still be all over your fingers, so it gets really messy. But I guess that's also part of the fun, right? I mean, it's nice to get I mean, if your hands are all clean after you've drawn an entire drawing, then something wasn't right, I guess, actually. Okay. I'm looking at the questions because I wrote questions on the paper, and I think I went through all of them. Do you guys have any more questions, like before I end this live? Do you have any more questions about charcoal, or any more questions about other blending material, other drawing materials? Let me know. Oh yeah, this is also a type of charcoal. This is really dark charcoal, block charcoal, and this I use for really large areas. Like if you want to make an entire area black, I would just be like and then you have something entirely black. The good thing about charcoal is it's super black, and if you like dark colors, it's ideal for you. What is the other sketchbook before the charcoal? That is called the Pink Pig sketchbook. This one you mean? It's called Pink Pig. You can just buy it on Amazon. It's like €7. I really like the texture of it. I really like the way it blends. So I really recommend it. How do you draw skin with charcoal? Yeah, this is one of the reasons that I personally don't use charcoal as much anymore, because it's a bit difficult. Look, for example, the one that I did here. Yeah, because this is tinted paper, it already has a black. If you look at a picture black and white, it already has a skin tone for many Korean idols, for example. Then all you have to do is make the shadow parts darker. So for this one I use a light charcoal pencil, like this one from Derwent, and I made the skin and then blended it with a charcoal with a blending stump, and then the white parts, the highlights, are being made with white charcoal, with this one actually, and then blended. And then this highlight I did with pastel. I generally do not use gel pen as a highlight with charcoal. I think that doesn't. What's the difference between carbon and charcoal? I think that's the same actually. Is it harder to draw smaller pictures with charcoal? It's absolutely impossible if you ask me. You can't draw anything smaller than this size. I mean, you can, but charcoal is something that's not. Look, for example, you can see this. This is a. If we would draw like a hand, yeah, or something like that. A hand like that. Now, if I want to draw that same hand with this charcoal, As you can see, the outline is much thicker, so you cannot get into any details. And this is just an outline. But if we're talking about eyes and tiny details, then yeah, you just have to work bigger. Supplies for drawing charcoal expensive? No, it's not that expensive. If you buy a basic set like the set I just showed you, it's I think 9 or 10 euros, and you can already get started. Don't worry, I'm going to save this stream. Don't worry. How do I draw hair? For example, this one over here. I barely used anything except white. And then, as you can see on tinted paper, blend it a little bit. Then let's give it some highlights. And a little bit of shadow maybe. And that's basically how you draw hair. With charcoal, that is. And that's only white hair. All right. Any more questions about charcoal? All right. So then, if you guys, how about with pencil? It's basically, let's say I would, the white hair with pencil, I just shown it a little bit, but what you do is with white hair with pencil, you don't really draw the hair, you draw the outline of hair. And then because you draw the outline of it, you draw contrast with the background, and that gives it an illusion that there's something white on the paper, while in fact you're just not drawing anything, you're just making sure that it pops a little bit from the paper. And then if you have darker hair, yeah, my hair takes a lot of time, and there's not an easy trick to not draw hair, except if you just decide not to draw hair. Basically, hair is just a lot of strings, making strings and then blend, and then making strings again and then blend, and then making strings again and then blend. And at the end, you can also use your pencil eraser to make it seem like there's something more. Do you also draw with charcoal blocks? Yeah, I do, like this one. And I use it to make big areas dark immediately. But I don't use charcoal as much as I use pencil. Yes, that's Leo. No. If you outline with pencil and go over it with charcoal, it depends on how much you put pressure on your pencil. If you just draw very lightly with pencil and you only use like an H or a 2H pencil to draw outlines, then you can just easily go over it with charcoal and you won't see it. I always do that. So I always start out with this slight, how do you say? Just like the points where the head would be and the points where his cheekbone would be, etc., etc. I make that with pencil, and then I put charcoal over it. And when you blend it, you can't see anything. See? All right. Yeah, no problem. You're very welcome. Okay, guys, then I'm going to end this live stream. I'm going to re-upload everything afterwards, and then yeah, I hope you guys learned something today. All right, then I'll see you later. Bye bye.